How we doing, folks? So we're gonna get back into it again. This is gonna be a half hour or less. This is gonna be what we covered in the Zoom 2 weeks ago. So this is the chapter 5. This is the first section of chapter 5. So what we're dealing with here is it's called voice leading. Okay, and voice leading is when we talk about how each voice moves through the compositional process. So how the melody goes, the soprano, the alto, tenor, bass, and how all of those parts kind of intertwine and work together. So we have 5 rules that we talk about. Okay, so the 5 rules to writing a good melody. Okay. Rule number 1, okay, is rhythm. And we want to keep it simple. Because what we're trying to go for here is sight-readable melodies. Okay? We want it to be easily sung. So, number 1, we want our rhythms to be simple. Okay? The final note should end on a strong beat. Okay, so final note ends on a strong beat. And if you remember from chapter 2, those of you who were in the class, that's either beat 1 or 3 for a strong beat. Okay. Number 2 is harmony. We want to make sure that every note is a member of the chord outlined below. Okay. So if here's our melody, and let's say we're in the key of G, and our melody is B, C, A, F sharp, G. Okay? Just nothing amazing. So we start with a 1 chord here, and then this is going to be a 4 chord. This is going to be a 5. This is going to be a 5, and this is going to be a 1. Okay. So the 1 chord in the key of G is G, B, D. There is a B in the 1 chord. The 4 chord is C, E, G. There's a C in the 4 chord. And we know this because if we go back a step, if you spell your G major scale, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and you don't need to do the top G, but every letter of the scale gets a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you build chords above it. So there's B and D, so you do thirds. A, C, E, B, D, F sharp, C, E, G, D, F sharp, A, E, G, B, F sharp, A, C. And those numbers get Roman numerals. Okay, so the 1 is really an I. The 2 chord is a lowercase 2 because it's minor. 3, lowercase. If you don't know what this means, go back and watch the previous video called Chapter 3 and 4 Crash Course. Okay. I'll try and link it above if I can figure out how to do that. I'm not that savvy at this yet. So, for harmony, we want to make sure that every note belongs to the chord below. The 5 chord, D, F sharp, A. So there's the A, and there's the F sharp, and we're back to G. So every note has to belong to the chord. That's our goal right now. Our 3rd rule, okay, is about contour. Okay. And what they want you to know about contour, it should be primarily stepwise. The shape of the melody should be interesting and clear Sorry, it should be interesting but clear and simple, with one single focal point as the highest note. So if we go back to what I did earlier, you have this one C in your melody. That's a nice focal point. Okay, one note is the highest note. Right? So, contour. One focal point, also known as the highest note. It should be interesting, but clear and simple. Okay. So let's see. If we went into, you're gonna have to excuse me for this. Wasn't super prepared, but we'll make do here. Chapter 5 textbook. Okay, so this is what we're dealing with right now. Okay, so here we're dealing with contour. Okay, melody should be stepwise. It should be clear and simple with a single focal point. Here's what they're talking about with in the key with harmony, where you have to make sure each note belongs to the chord. So if you look at this E in the key of C, you go C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You go thirds above it, G, B, D. There is not an E in a 5 chord. So that melody note not in the chord. But here's some examples of contour, right? Down, up, leap of a third, down, down. That's good. This is boring. Do, re, mi, fa, mi, re, do. Right? 2 focal points with a big leap, down, down, another big leap, down, down. Right? It's interesting, but has 2 focal points. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back. So 1 focal point being the highest note, interesting, clear and simple, and should be stepwise. Right. And that brings us to point 4, leaps. So a step in music is going from like F to G to F to E to F. That's all stepwise. When we talk about leaps, they're talking 1, 2, 3, 4. That's hard to sing. Okay. So with leaps, there are 3 things that we want to know. Point 1. Okay. We want to avoid augmented. Intervals. Sevenths. And anything larger than an octave. An octave is okay, but anything more than an octave, no go. Okay. B. If you leap more than a fourth, you want to leap down in the opposite direction. So if you leap up a fourth, you have to go down a step in the opposite direction. I'll show you that here. So if you leap more than a fourth, you need to resolve down. It's not resolve down, excuse me. It's resolve. Let's erase. Resolve in the opposite direction. So, we're here. You know what? For all the cellists in the class, we'll go bass clef. So we have an A. That's our first note. Then we're going to leap to an E. Because we're leaping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, We're leaping more than a fourth. That's 5 notes. That's a leap of a perfect fifth. The next note in your melody should probably be the pitch of D. Right? Same thing. If we are on an E and we leap down to a B, okay, so there's your perfect fourth. You should resolve up by a step. Right. So there's letter B. C. So if you are going to use consecutive leaps, they should outline a triad. And I actually did that up here. If you look back at the top example, where we have CAF, we had 3 leaps that are thirds. They outlined a triad, F sharp A C. Okay. So same thing, and for the viola player, we'll use alto clef. So if you're gonna go C, and you want to leap again, there's E, then you leap again, there's G. Okay. And last, but certainly not least, is tendency tones. And what this is telling us that tones have, they want to resolve when we're dealing with a major scale. And those tendency tones are the 4th scale degree want to resolve to 3, and the 7th scale degree wants to resolve to 1 or 8. Okay. So that's, I walk in and I go, okay, folks, here we go. And I go to the piano, I play a 1 chord, a 4 chord, a 1 chord, a 5 chord, and I just kind of leave it sit there. And it makes you uneasy because that 7 wants to resolve to 1. Okay? Do, 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 mi, so, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Right? Do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. It wants to resolve to do. So that is, sorry, there's motorcycles going up and down my street all day. It's been fairly intense. Okay. So, back here, let's move to the next page. Okay. The workbook and the textbook are going to be online in the Canvas sections of the file section of Canvas and Classroom for you guys to use. Okay, so here's what I want you guys to do. I want you to go through 5-1, and I want you to criticize the melody, all right, for A, and then for B, you're going to compose some simple melodies. Okay, so you're going to criticize each melody, and then you're going to compose a simple melody that will conform to the progression. Now, let's see how long. We're at 13 minutes. We're going to keep going, okay, because we still have another 18 minutes. I can get through this. So, the first part of your assignment is going to be 5-1. And you're going to do... you just listen to the instructions. Listen to the instructions of what the classroom says. Don't listen to this video. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about in the video. Jeez. Okay, so we're going to forge ahead. Okay. So this up here is 5-1. Now we're going to move on to part 2. There are a few things that we want to highlight in 5-2. So we are going to draw a grand staff. And a grand staff is when you have a treble clef and a bass clef and you put them together. Okay. So we're going to talk about good things and bad things to do when you are scoring and writing 4-part music. So this is an example of the right way to voice a chord. This is happy. This is good. we're going to move on and show you some things that aren't so good. Now, F, A, where the F, this is no good. This is called crossed voices, where, let's go blue, where that is really the soprano line, and this is really the alto line, and the parts cross. We don't want to do that. That's not something we want to get in the habit of doing. So, this is a no-go. So, the next one we're going to look at here, G, B, D, and G. So this progression, the way that this is written, is 100% right. And if you look, the alto and the tenor are singing the same pitch. And that's how it should be written. It should not be written like this. Okay? That is unbelievably confusing. There's not just a middle area here where you can just write C. Okay? Every part needs to have ledger lines and have a responsibility. These ledger lines keep moving up, so there is C. The same space here that is here, that is here. Same thing here. C, A, F. That's the way it needs to look. The ledger lines, this is awful. The last thing they want you to see is that G, B, D, G, and E, C, C, where this just kind of goes up there, and both parts are now in the alto. If you're going to start in 4-part, you need to continue in 4-part. Because the way this looks is if it's only 3 parts. Something that you need to know very briefly is closed structure versus open structure. There's an assignment on this. You're not going to do it. So closed structure is when there's less than 1 octave between the soprano and the tenor. The open structure is an octave or more between soprano and tenor. So, here's an example of an open structure. Let's do this, and I'll show you what that means. So if we're in the key of G, G, B, D, G. Okay. Between this right here and this right here, this is a 6th. This is an example of closed structure. Open structure would be G, B, D, G. This is a tenth. So closed and open structure, you're dealing with the soprano and the tenor. The bass does whatever it wants. The bass just roams around, and that has nothing to do with closed and open structure. Should you know it? You should. Is it going to be a big deal? No. The last thing that we're going to talk about is spacing conventions. And let's see if we can fit this in here. If you wanted to look in your book, this is page 71, where right in the middle of the page where it says about crossed voices. And we alluded to crossed voices up here, right, where the parts go overlap each other. Let's see. Can I get rid of that? There it is. So if I'm in treble clef and we're on an F, so both parts are on an F. So let's pretend this is the soprano part up here and the alto part down here. Then you have a C that reaches up here and a G here. Okay. That's how it should be written. Right? But this is okay. If you start on an F, you have the C and you have the G, and the parts do that where they cross, this is no. That is crossed voices. The soprano needs to stay on the top, the alto needs to stay below it. They don't cross each other. They can meet like they're doing here, but they can't cross each other. The other thing you want to do is concerning spacing. You want to keep all of the parts within an octave of each other. So if you are writing a melody or writing an alto and a soprano part, and you have them at octaves, this is okay. It's an octave. This is good. But if you have, so there's the soprano, there's the alto. But if you have the soprano here on an F, and you have the alto down here, okay, you're going to see it's marked as plus 8V. Okay, more than an octave. There's the soprano. Okay. So when you're writing your parts, the spacing happens between the soprano and the alto and tenor. They need to stay an octave or less with each other. And I think that is where we're going to leave it off. So if you have any questions, send me an email, let me know. The assignment is going to be in Classroom and Canvas, and you can print it out, you can do it digitally, you can do it however you want. We can figure it out to the best of our ability here, okay? Let me know if you have any questions. I hope to see you guys soon. Bye.